is there a more equitable and wholesome structure to the capitalist model where you can cycle capital through the system via charities and via charitable outcomes, the most disadvantaged people? The reason a company exists is to further the interests of a shareholder. But it doesn't really make sense at a broader scale, which is companies doing often some of the most atrocious things in order to uphold the interests of shareholders. And they say, well, what happens if people copy you? It's like, what happens if people copy us? That would be the best outcome ever. If the whole of the ticketing industry was to copy us, that would be billions of dollars every single year from booking fees going into the world's best children's charities. Like, what an amazing outcome. That's the whole point.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome back to the Inspired Evolution. And we have with us today someone inspiring our evolution, Adam McCurdie. Adam, how are you there, brother?
Oh, very good. Thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm so good, man. And it is such a pleasure to have you on. I'm better for having you here, I have to say. For those that don't know Adam, hold your horses for just 2 seconds. Let me do the honors. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Humanitix, which actually before researching for this podcast, I've come across Humanitix many times, but I actually didn't know so much about the business model that was actually employed behind it. We're going to dive in a little bit about it today. It's actually really interesting what you guys are up to in the world. You're a world-leading social enterprise disrupting the multi-billion-dollar events ticketing industry, and you're actually funding. Well, maybe I should hear from you what the cause is that you guys are funding through selling tickets to events online. What do you guys? What?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's actually 2 points of impact for Humanitix. One is through the giving that we do from our own profits. We give away 100% of our profits to the world's best kids' education charities. That's both here in Australia, America, developing countries, all around the world. And on top of that, our technology itself makes live events more accessible for patrons with disabilities, such that social inclusion for everyone that needs accessible things at events can now be improved significantly.
I love that. Now, let's start with the first point. Why do you donate 100% of your profits? What, you don't want to be rich?
It sounds like we've gone through similar paths. Yeah, I'm an engineer and a mathematician by training. I love maths, I love sciences, I love building things. And I came to the realization that there are a lot of very difficult and profitable problems to solve with maths and engineering, that kind of stuff, that is hollow and empty and doesn't really do much for one's soul. And so my ambition was to try to work out how I could combine the two. Where you're building things, creating things, doing things for some awesome higher purpose that genuinely picks up a big responsibility for the planet and makes a genuine, huge contribution back to society. And so in doing that, I was then looking at ways in which there's not just products themselves that can be built to further and make a contribution to society, but potential tweaks to capitalism and business that can then be even more scalable to then make huge impacts of just rethinking how business is done. And in that, I teamed up with a best friend, Josh Ross. We've known each other now for 15 odd years. He was going down the finance path. I was going down more the engineering path. And he very similarly had, the same kinds of issues with wanting to further his career, build skills, solve challenging problems, but also make a contribution to society, because that's how we all get along together much better. And it also personally just feeds your soul and nourishes your soul that much more. And so I'll pause there.
No, keep going. Don't keep going. Tell us more, because at some point you and Josh aren't just best mates, mate. You guys shared a salary for 16 months. What the actual?
That's it. Exactly. It's the most wild, wacky awesome.
How do you share a
bit of work
salary? I don't even
for-
understand. Can you describe to me, like, you and Josh's relationship? How you guys, like, where did you first meet, and then how did you go into business together, and how are you
Sure, well, I'll
sharing
give
a
you
salary?
yeah, with pleasure. I'll give you the context. I mean, we were both working in our jobs and looking to kind of really do something else, like I was describing, where you're providing that contribution back to society. Social enterprise really became super interesting to both of us. So that's where you can run a business, and the business, either through what it does or through giving away its profits, sometimes some of its profits, sometimes all of its profits, can then further a purpose, often in a charitable domain, like where you're giving all your money to charity, etc., whilst running a sustainable business. And that was really exciting. But what we were seeing was that all of these social enterprises, whether they be beautiful cafes or brands like Thank You, their soaps, or now who gives a crap, who give away 50% of profits from toilet paper, all of that is in fast-moving consumer goods, which are, can often be great businesses. But what about software as a service? What about software? This software right here that we're using to run this podcast. There's businesses out there that are distributed through the internet, are immediately scalable globally, are making huge amounts of profits, and we're not seeing any social enterprises emerge
In that space.
And so then the question became, what would be a really cool software as a service social enterprise to give a go and see whether or not we could tackle that. And so that's where it all began. And so that's where the two of us started talking more and more in depth. To be honest, I think if it wasn't for my relationship and chats with Josh, vice versa, I don't think I would have made the courageous step to go and try Humanitx. It was being able to talk with a close friend about how I'm feeling, what I want to do with my career, what I want to start to experiment, and what the things that I'm most interested in are. And being able to share that openly without keeping it in my own head was huge and transformational for me in terms of making that first step. So
no, sorry, I was just go on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so then what happened is it kind of got more and more serious. I was like, all right, are we going to do this or what? So then I, with my engineering background, etc., decided, let me leave my job, give up my salary, and go in full time to start to investigate what software businesses we could perhaps disrupt with a social enterprise model. To do this would require a full-time effort. We had a few loose ideas of what we could be doing, but not a very clear plan and not a very clear idea of which kind of business and how we'd go about that. So there was an option there. The two of us could have both left our jobs, given up our salaries, and then both of us, diving in full-time, delving into our savings to keep ourselves afloat. But we thought to ourselves, well, look, what if we're a bit smarter than that? What if we can depend and rely on the trust of our relationship and our partnership to make it work both ways? And in that, it was like, okay, here's a plan. Okay, Adam, I'm going to give up my salary, leave my job, put my traditional career on hold to focus full time on what would become Humanitx and finding out what we do. And at the same time, Josh would then stay in his job so that he would continue to earn a salary. And then we would simply split his salary because I'm no longer earning a salary. But now, because he's still working, we can now both earn something while simultaneously giving this business a shot and giving it a go. And that's how it all started, with just wanting to team up to hedge our bets and hedge our risks of earning an income whilst giving a new venture a go.
Man, just because I find it like sometimes it's hard enough having the conversation with your spouse for some people about like, hey, I want to start this business venture. And then here you are trusting your best mate to, basically, hey, let's split your salary while I go and double down on the business that we're both going to co-own, co-found together. Mate, that's a really awesome story. Every time I hear it, I love it even more.
There was crazy enough. There was no paperwork. There was no, signed agreement. It was just, let's give this a go for 6 to 12 months, try our best, see what happens on a handshake, and off we went. And that's exactly what happened. So we ended up sharing a salary for about 16 months in total. And it was during, in the first few months that I then discovered events ticketing. So there's this whole industry of events ticketing.
Yeah, how did you pick that as the one you wanted to disrupt? Yeah.
Have you ever bought a ticket to an event and got slapped with some ridiculous booking fee that you question how much they're charging? And ticketing, you're even seeing now with what's happened with Taylor Swift, kind of the more headline pieces that are coming out with people's dismay of the ticketing industry. What an awesome industry to potentially disrupt with a social enterprise model that makes the ticketing industry non-profit. What a beautiful fit, because then you have a non-profit coming in with the intentions of society in mind to make things fair for artists, fair for guests, attendees, and then on top of that, donating away 100% of any profits that the organization makes to the world's best charities. That could be a really cool and unique combination that's really, really compelling to the industry. And so with that, we started to look at, how do we get set up? So then I started to look at how do we start to offer an events registration platform to the smaller, more simple events. So things like paint and sip classes, art classes, yoga retreats, meditation retreats, things where you're talking about, maybe 10 to 100 people gathering on a night or a weekend where the ticketing requirements are quite basic. And then building from there into more complex events like conferences, music festivals, schools, marathons, walkathons, summits, awards nights, gala dinners, you name it. And now going more into venues and that kind of thing. And that's so starting small and then building out the sophistication and the complexity of the platform to over time start to offer Humanitix as a compelling switch over the ticketing provider that the event organizer is currently using. And it was at the point of 16 months that we'd put together a really great ticketing platform that was starting to get phenomenal traction. Both Josh and I were still bootstrapping the organization where we were funding all of its development and ourselves. Josh was still at his job. But then at 16 months, it got to the stage where I can't personally continue to, handle everything that's happening now. Like this thing it's not yet a success, but it's very, very promising where we've got maybe 100 clients who are using us. They're happy. We want to keep improving the product, all these kinds of things. And so it was at that moment that Josh left his job and joined me full-time on Humanitix. And the two of us continued to then bootstrap the development of Humanitix from our own savings. And then it was only 4 or 5 months after that we then started to raise money for Humanitix. But it was incredibly difficult to raise money for Humanitix because our intention and what we ended up achieving was that Humanitix would be, in essence, it would be a non-profit. It's actually a registered charity. And when you make an organization a non-profit or a registered charity, it means that there is no equity. So you can't go to a venture capitalist and say, give us $100,000 for 10% of the company because there is no equity to trade. And so because of that, we had to go to high net worth, often individuals and foundations to say, if this charity works, if this nonprofit works, if you give us money to support our growth and development now, the point is we won't have to come back to you for more money in the future, because the idea behind Humanitix is that the revenue model and the booking fees fund the business and make a profit that then is given to the most effective frontline charities we can find, which, if it works, is going to make a lever on the money that you're giving us. We're going to multiply the money you're giving us, and we're not going to have to come back to you for more money. Now, that all makes sense in theory, and now that it's working really, really well, I mean, we've now, as of next month, we're going to give away another tranche of money, and that will put us over $4.5 million, close to $5 million in total that we've just given away from company profit since, and that's growing dramatically. That makes sense now because it's working. But back then, you're telling a philanthropist, donate to our ticketing platform, please, because if this works, it'll be great. And that is a very, very tough sell. not a lot of people are interested in taking a punt on such a wacky, different out there idea, particularly in the realm of nonprofit and charity work.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get seed capital when you don't have a wacky idea, let alone, think out the box thinking that you're demonstrating. Yeah, go on.
That's right. And so eventually we found a small handful of phenomenal Australian philanthropists who said, this is cool. This makes sense. I back you guys. Let's give you money. So they gave us money, and that allowed us to start to hire a more robust engineering and product team, knowing that the path to our success is a platform where the technology and the value proposition that we're offering event organizers is not just more socially impactful because we're the only ticketing platform giving away profits to charity, but that it's actually better. It's got more features. It'll help you sell tickets better, more easily, help you sell more tickets. And on top of that, the booking fees will be lower than what you're currently paying. And all the profits from booking fees are going to children's charities. We had to make the biggest no-brainer value proposition to event organizers as our path to success. And that was always the strategy from day one.
The bit that really gets me, there's so much in there. There's so much that gets me. But one of the bits that gets me is when you're asking investors to invest in your business as well, you're actually not asking them to, because investors are usually ROIing, right? And they're sort of holding out over a certain period. Whereas this is like an investment in a gift. They're donating money to you as a charity that will keep on charitying. This is venture philanthropy.
Exactly. Got it. Exactly.
This is so trippy. This is so trippy. Is this like, has this been modeled out before for you to model, or like have you heard of venture philanthropy before? Or are you guys just
no,
the right kind of crazy?
Made it up. We made it up, and you've got it. That's exactly what it is. It's venture philanthropy. And the biggest group that leaned into this concept was the Atlassian Foundation. It's the foundation of Mike Cannon-Brookes and Scott Farquhar's company, Atlassian. And they have a huge foundation, and their head of foundation, Mark Reading, was thankfully an ex-partner at a big accounting finance firm. And so he's now running the foundation. The foundation's giving away money to the best charities that they can find. And we pitched to the foundation and pitched to Mark, and he straight away got it. He said, oh my God, based on your current success and where you're taking the business, and I can see what you're doing here, the Atlassian Foundation is going to give you a once-off grant. And if this all works out, the impact that's going to be made, the amount of money that's going to be going to charities that we'd want to be donating to anyway, is going to be 10, 20, 100 times what this grant is right now. This is amazing. Plus, the more Humanitixes that start to succeed in the world, the more likelihood that other people will be inspired to create a Humanitix in another industry, which is then the other multiple on this whole concept. And honestly, that's one of the things we're focused on this year and next, which is sharing as much as we can of how we built Humanitix in the way that we did as a nonprofit, as a registered charity, and having a playbook for people to lean into and learn from and follow, because the idea is that people copy what we've done. Please, please, please copy us. It's the beautiful tweak on capitalism that we've done here, where when we started pitching to philanthropists at the beginning, it's funny because everyone puts their business hat on when they were, assessing our business and whether or not they wanted to give us money. And they said, well, what happens if people copy you? It's like, what happens if people copy us? That would be the best outcome ever. I mean, if everyone was to copy us, if the whole of the ticketing industry was to copy us, and that would be the worst thing that could happen, that would be billions of dollars every single year from booking fees going into the world's best children's charities. Like, what an amazing outcome for your tiny graph. That's the whole point. And so it's really getting cool and interesting and exciting as we're playing with these concepts and tweaking capitalism, because it is a very, very powerful driver of a lot of things. And what we're experimenting with here and have found amazing results is tweaking it and playing with it. There's just way more to it than the traditional format of capitalism, and avoiding, I think, avoiding the conversation of, is capitalism good or bad? Should capitalism just be scrapped? Personally, I think that's too blunt of an instrument.
Yeah,
to
too
have
broad
that
brush.
Conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the question is the form in which capitalism is adopted, and that is what we're experimenting and playing with at Humanitx.
So you've exchanged shareholders for children in need of education in developing places.
Exactly.
Is it really just that simple?
It's really that simple, because the business runs exactly the same as any other business, which is build a great product, offer a compelling value proposition to your clients that make them want to use your product, have a competitive price, service the hell out of your clients so that they love using your product, which makes the business more profitable. And then the last piece is, rather than those profits going into shareholders' pockets, those profits go into the world's most disadvantaged kids via the most impactful children's charities that we can find.
Talent retention, Adam. For people like yourself and myself, a bit disillusioned by what's going on in the corporate world, there's a lot of meaning now that you don't have stakeholders in the mix and you've got disadvantaged kids in the mix. How does that translate to the engineers working on the software and the platform?
It's been fascinating. There are a lot of people who are disillusioned, like you mentioned, who something like a Humanitix is incredibly refreshing and a no-brainer. And it's like, oh my God, yes, software, it's business, it's clients, it's that whole world for this awesome, scalable social impact that is real and tangible and meaningful. Wow, sign me up. But then what's most interesting to me is that it turns out that even with people who aren't that disillusioned, it turns out that it's just the vast, vast, vast majority of people want a meaningful career, want their skills to be valued, want to work in a lovely, beautiful team, and to have skills be developed, be challenged, and all of that translate into something that they can be proud of. And that is what I'm learning. It's just almost a universal desire. It's just expressed in different ways. Some people will just totally just say, I'm over this. I'm crazy. I'm going to start a podcast, and others will grapple with it in a different way. But I'm convinced that lies within everyone. That's what we're seeing at Humanitix. And that's why our retention has just been insane. Social impact doesn't just make a business. Just because you have a great social impact of a business doesn't mean you don't have a toxic work culture and all that kind of stuff. So we work very, very hard to make sure that the culture and everything is just thriving, people's work is valued, all that kind of stuff. But I tell you what, having the business built on a foundation, on a bedrock that is a legitimate, tangible contribution to society that's exciting and innovative and new and growing, that is a huge help to the whole situation.
Because when you look at the word Humanitix, you actually just, from the outside looking in the first time you come across it, because I've come across it plenty, it's just like, oh yeah, tickets for people going in and out of places, humans, like, we're going to events, so Humanitix, right? And then you start to realize after listening to you share that it's actually ticketing for humanity. It's got a cause, not just baked into it, but actually driving it. Mate, you also won the Google Impact Award. How did that come about?
Yeah, so it would have been 2.5, 3 years into our journey. We've continued to grow and scale, and the business is starting to donate more and more money from our profits into charities, and clients are happy. The Google Impact Challenge came to Australia, and this is a challenge run by Google that searches for the most innovative, socially impactful nonprofits using technology to create social impact. And If you win, they give you $1 million. And obviously our ears pricked up. We applied and got through the first round, and then got through the second round, and then we made the final 10, which is the final round. And this culminated as myself going to the Google's head office in Sydney with 9 other contestants, and you had to pitch in front of 5 or 6 judges, of these high-profile judges, and pitch your business.
Okay.
And it was the most insane format ever. It was a 90-second pitch, and literally at the 90th second, the red light goes on and you get yanked off the stage. You cannot say a word over 90 seconds.
That is intense.
Followed by 3 minutes of Q&A. And that's it. And get up there, 90 seconds, 3 minutes of Q&A, use your time wisely, and hope you win. And that's what happened. I got up there. Thankfully, it all went well of this rehearsed pitch. There's a famous Mark Twain quote that says, "I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Rambling on is easy, but trying to condense your message and everything into a
90 seconds.
It was like working day and night for weeks in the lead up to that.
I can imagine.
Then trying to preempt the questions, but they all came out nicely and answered the questions of how we're doing what we're doing. And then the announcement came up, and the first winner was announced, Humanitx. And there we were, another $1 million of cash, which allowed us to then rapidly accelerate, the people we're hiring, and then ultimately the product we're building, and how we can service more and more event organizers around the world to use and switch to Humanitx from their current ticketing provider.
Why did you pick education for disadvantaged children as your charity? You could have picked anything, I imagine. And knowing you driven by impact, that's probably an interesting place. Yeah, tell us why you chose that. Yeah.
A few things. One is actually that's about to expand into a broader reach than just children's education, likely at the end or start of next year, which is a very exciting development for us as we start to expand into new impact areas. So we're not long-term solely focused on kids' education. The reason for kids' education is varied. One, the impact that you can create on multi-generational level by investing in quality education for any child on the planet is, the research on that is just phenomenal. That's both seen in countries like Australia as well as developing countries all around the world. And then in developing countries, it's specifically seen in the investment in women's education, where you're able to get now a culture of education coming through the home. All these kinds of things where education is valued, curiosity is valued. And so that the research on that is just immensely compelling. It has impacts on the environment. And then it has this multi-generational impact that I referenced. And so that as a starting point for us was just insanely compelling. We then were able to tap into resources on the back of the Atlassian Foundation, who also have an education focus. And we realized that they spend all of their time, effort, and resources on finding the world's most impactful education charities. We said, well, that's great. Let's team up with them. And now we're taking independent guidance from this fantastic foundation, hiring in exceptionally smart people to help us navigate who are those charity partners that we're donating to in the start of our journey. And then that's a very clever move, because then we can optimize the impact that we're making via our donations, because we're taking the guidance of the group like the Atlassian Foundation, who's doing the most amazing amount of research ever.
In this space. Yeah.
And that then allows us to free up our capital, our money, to spending on making the ticketing platform better, winning more event hosts, and ultimately making more profit, which grows the pie that we can then direct via the consultation of groups like the Atlassian Foundation, and then after that, others. Noting that sharing of information in the philanthropy sector, in charities and nonprofits, that's the name of the game. That's how everybody wins. Because if you know of a phenomenal charity that's doing the most amazing work and it's evidence-backed and it's researched, etc., it's not in your interest to keep that a secret. You want to tell the world. And so that was a very cool dynamic of the nonprofit sector that we've tapped into, and we're looking to flourish that, help collaboration be much more a part of the nonprofit sector, which I think is a whole other impact in and of itself.
Wow. So is this limited to, well, is the model limited, like you said initially, you hadn't seen it in SAS before. Is it available to, let's just take the Inspired Evolution for an example. It's a personal development company with a podcast. Can anybody set themselves up as a charity and then turn their business profits into charitable, donatable incomes? Like, is it limited to certain industries? Wow. Okay. No. Yes. And
everyone can do it.
Unequivocal. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And you know what? The most amazing thing happened earlier this year, or no, maybe at the end of last year, is Patagonia, the outdoor clothing brand, officially changed from a for-profit to a non-profit. That's exactly what you're talking about. So they have scrapped, there is no more equity in the business. They are now a non-profit and now completely able to progress with their benevolent mission, which is awesome. The challenge in transforming a for-profit company into a non-profit is pissing off your shareholders. So you have to have shareholders that are willing to give up their equity for the sake of the transformation of the company to go into a non-profit. That's the challenge. That's what would, stop the vast majority of companies from making the switch to a non-profit and starting to give away their profits to charity, etc., in the same way that Humanitx does.
Do you have any concerns that you don't have any equity in Humanitx? Does that ever cross your mind?
In the early days, I had concerns because I thought it would stop us from raising the money that we needed to raise to build the platform that would allow us to succeed. But now that we've achieved that, no, it is the most freeing thing ever. We don't have shareholders who are looking to pass the bag and get their exit. And so what do? They hammer you for short-term unsustainable growth so that they can pass the bag to somebody else and sell their shares and get their exit. And then all these shareholders looking to do the same thing and just kind of get their multiple and pass the bag. And we don't have to deal with any of that. And so the fact that we don't have equity, there's no shareholders, frees Humanitx up to really move in the direction and the purpose that we've been set up to be good to achieve. On a personal level, there's huge amounts of money that has been taken off the table for myself and Josh, because as a founder, of any company, you would own a significant amount of equity that once the company becomes successful, you then get to sell that equity and make huge amounts of money. That is not an option and not a possibility for myself and Josh. And so there's been huge personal sacrifice, but that's the whole point of why we've set this up. This is an experiment. This is an scratching an itch of curiosity of how we can do things better. And I have no regrets. I would not have it any other way.
Even just hearing about your relationship with Atlassian and just how supportive, just having someone else do the research for where you wanted to invest and just freeing up, like you said, just us doing what we do, which is ticketing like a boss, just doing it really well, making it better, making it more like the user interface more lush, and just dedicating ourselves to making it more cost effective, etc., etc. Do you think if you hadn't set it up the model the way that it was, and this is sort of like a left field question, how much is the model also responsible for your success as well? Because people could see that you wanted to give back, and they also wanted to give back into you guys to give back more. Venture philanthropy.
Great question. It's a combination, and there are a handful of people that will switch to a more ethical brand or a more ethical product purely on the basis of it being more socially impactful. But to make any product, including Humanitx, scale and really achieve the impact that it can, you have to also offer a phenomenally high quality product, something that rivals all of its competitors, come in at a super competitive price point, something that rivals all of its competitors, offer better service than all of your competitors, and make the thing a complete no-brainer. Then it has the true capability to scale, because then you're no longer fishing amongst a small group of people that are particularly ethically minded, of which there are a nice pool of people there. But then you're also capturing people that are caring about price, caring about product, caring about service, caring about all these other aspects of a business that you can then capture as well on your own merit, on those terms. And that is key to our philosophy in creating Humanitx, and what's, I think, made us so successful, which is what we do on our social impact by giving away our profits to charity is incredibly unique, and something that I hope a lot of our competitors start to copy, but none of them do. None of them do it at this moment. And so that's incredibly unique. That's beautiful. But if we rely on that as the sole reason why event organizers are switching to Humanitx, it won't be successful. We will lose. Because eventually event organizers will say, you know what, like, that's beautiful. You guys donate all your profits away, but I have to go to a better ticketing platform. I have to, there's key features for my conference.
Yes, of course.
Exactly. I'm selling $25 million in tickets. I've got 40,000 people coming through the door in the space of 4 hours. I need great technology that's going to allow my business to process that amount of money, to offer the features and the options to my guests that I want to offer, to on the gate on the day process everyone through, so you don't have these long lines of 40,000 people in a disaster. Like, there's so much at stake when you're the ticketing platform. There's no, I'm sorry, the platform went down. Although that does happen even with the biggest players, which is mind-blowing. There is no I'm sorry. So you have to come to the table with a compelling value proposition and a compelling product and something that truly stands on its own merit, independent of us donating all of our profits away. Would people switch to Humanitx anyway? And if the answer to that question is yes, wow, now you've got a wicked combo. And that's what we've created at Humanitx.
I love that. Thank you so much for just, highlighting how important quality really is when you're delivering anything to the market as well. So the key thing in there, circling back, if someone was curious about how to potentially set up themselves as a charity or to pivot what they've currently got as a charity, how would they do that utilitarianly, like functionally? How do you actually go about doing something like that? Like, is there a particular type of charity that you set up? And then also any pitfalls, any words of advice,
Sure. I mean, there's a few options, and ultimately what you would do is work with both an accountant and a lawyer to transform the company into a non-profit and then a charity. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of basic steps. One would be to change the establishment of the company from maybe being a company that's a PTY Ltd into a company that is what's called company limited by guarantee. So that's why you have Humanitx Limited. And so that is the most common base organizational structure for a charity or a non-profit. After you've set yourself up as a company limited by guarantee, you would then go through your charity registration. Going through a charity registration then requires you to create basically a constitution, a founding document of your charity. And it lists out your charitable objectives and how members work and how the board works and how voting works. And so that is a standard charitable document that then governs the way that the charity operates. And then you would apply with, in Australia, the ACNC, which is the Australian Nonprofit and Charities Commission here in Australia. And then that would officially make you as a charity. But that's at the highest level, the basics of that. Choosing your charitable objectives is a challenging but very fun exercise of, what impact do you want to be making?
Yeah,
and then there's
impact
obviously
shopping.
on the accounting. Totally. And then there's obviously the accounting side where you need to work with your accountant to if there's any complexities of, you've taken investment from other people who own shares in your organization, you have to navigate that, which I think would be, is a custom thing based on the circumstances of the company.
Yeah, wow. I think it's inspiring to feel just how accessible it is for everyone. Is your long-term vision, mission, what would you say is your mission in life? And how does Humanitix fit into that?
My mission in life is to allow both myself and I guess society at large to question in more detail and more depth how we do things and how we can do things better. And starting with business as being the biggest driver of how everyone works, plays, lives their life, to me is a really cool, exciting place to make that impact. And questioning the driving force of a company as making its shareholders wealthy. As the reason a company exists is to further the interests of a shareholder. That is really, when you boil it down, why companies exist. And even at the board level, where you have, whether it be a listed board, so a company that's on the stock market, or a private company that has a board, particularly as a publicly traded company, the board has a responsibility to uphold the interests of shareholders. That is the board's job. They have one job, and it's that: uphold the interests of the company's shareholders. And that makes sense at one level, where you have, you're a shareholder, and then you have a board that keeps your interests in mind, that keeps management and the company accountable for keeping the shareholders' interests in mind. That's how it's structured: shareholders, board, company. And that kind of makes sense from a monetary perspective, and particularly if you're a shareholder and wanting to make sure that the company's operating in your interest. But it doesn't really make sense at a broader scale, which is companies that are doing often some of the most atrocious things in order to uphold the interests of shareholders. And as you can see, it's just such a single lens, such a short-term mindset, one-dimensional mindset, exactly, to look at business and the point of business, and really the point of the board, which is the directors of the company. Their job is to uphold the shareholders' interest. And that, to me, is crazy and too one-dimensional. And that ultimately is what we're testing and asking the question at Humanitix is like, does that even make sense? Does a company have to be set up solely to advance the interests of shareholders? And can we beat other companies that are set up to further the interests of shareholders, like all of our competitors in the ticketing industry, and beat them at their own game without shareholders, driven by a totally different philosophy for a totally different outcome? In our case, providing as much funding from profit as we can to the world's best charities.
I won't ask you specifically about how you're beating the competition, but I will ask you how you're going, because you've gone from, well, was it to start in Sydney, to start in Melbourne, and then you've made your way to Denver, Colorado, and now you're in other places as well. Wait, what? Can you tell us a little bit more about how things are going and where the offices are and what that translates to as the impact that you guys are having as business growth?
So we started in Sydney, Australia in 2016. And on the back of success here in Australia, we expanded into New Zealand and set up an office in Auckland. And we've got a great team over there. We're doing ticketing all across New Zealand. And then a couple of years ago, we expanded into the US, setting up an office in Denver, Colorado. We now have the most amazing, beautiful team in Denver. I was just there last month with the team. I go back and forward all the time. And our growth across the US now is incredibly exciting. By far, our biggest market and where we're most established is Australia. But our growth and success in the US is incredibly exciting. And at the moment, we are currently establishing an office and setting ourselves up in the UK, which is our next frontier for where we're getting so much interest for our platform, and event organizers wanting to switch and make the no-brainer switch to a platform like Humanitix for their events. And they're all based in the UK, and we're very excited to be launching Humanitix UK before the end of the year.
Man, that is so inspiring. In a day-to-day, like you and Josh, do you guys still get to see each other a lot? How does it actually go on a personal level? Like, you guys are best mates, but is he in a different office at a different time, or do you guys still get to hang out with each other quite a bit? How's it look?
We get to hang out with each other a lot. It varies, based on, if I'm in Colorado or he is in Colorado, etc. But we get so much crossover. I mean, right now, both of us are in Sydney. We had dinner last night. It's beautiful.
Awesome.
It's very interesting though, because you're obviously running this business that's, growing in complexity and, having to navigate all these challenges. And then at the same time, trying to feed a relationship and a friendship that is just one of the most meaningful in our lives, which is each other as our friendship. And that's just been such a beautiful journey. I really think that Humanitix has added to that mix. It definitely ran the risk of ruining a great friendship. But as it's turned out, we complement each other's skills and we see things from different perspectives, but we operate on the same wavelength. And so it's become effortless between us to have a conversation where we see things differently, and for that to be an effortless conversation, even although we don't see things in the same way, because we're vibrating on the same frequency. And I think that's kind of what, I don't really have words for that, but it's just been beautiful to experience. And then to have now more and more people join the Humanitix team, and for us all to work together and try our best. I think, to be honest, one of the healthiest things about this is that neither me or Josh can exit Humanitix. I mean, we could leave Humanitix. But I think if we were a for-profit company, one of the tensions right now between us would be, do we want to sell the company to somebody else who wants to acquire the company? Do one of us want to exit, but the other one doesn't? These kinds of things. Like, everyone's kind of got one ear out and one ear in on, what we want to do next. Whereas with Humanitix, there's no escape.
You're all in.
We're all in. Exactly. And that simplifies things a lot, and has, I think, benefited us immensely.
You mentioned the word luck earlier, and do you think the fact that you guys complement each other, was that by design, by intention, or just was that pure stroke, and then you guys actually operating on the same wavelength? Because I can imagine, even just myself, finding myself somewhat enamored that, running a business on your own can be, well, I want to say it's pretty hard on my wife, because she's always taking the bouncing of the ideas off of her. But yeah, it can be quite challenging running things on your own. But yeah, there's, when you say, do you feel like you got lucky, or do you think it's possible for other people to meet co-founders which actually, like, obviously you guys have an immense amount of trust amongst each other to be able to even share a salary, barely even a handshake, just like, this is what we're doing, great, let's get on with it. But yeah, do you think it's possible for those that are tuning in to find founders, just some inspiration for the audience?
I think it's definitely by luck that me and Josh complement each other so well, and that we found each other to set this up. But that being said, I'm a big proponent of positioning yourself for luck, and that being the strategy. And that's, I think, what we did really well, and continue to do and believe in, that if you position yourself for luck in as many ways as possible, some of them are going to work out and you then get lucky. And then, well, what's the story? The story is, well, we got lucky. But if you really strip it back, it's like,
tried really hard to get lucky.
Totally. Exactly. I'm not sure if there's any backgammon fans of yours on the podcast, but if anyone is interested in the game that really makes this point perfectly. It is the game of backgammon, because the whole way in which you win the game of backgammon, and the way backgammon is played at the highest level, is you position yourself to get lucky in the most possible ways, so that whatever you roll on the dice, because there's dice involved, is there's 12 different rolls that you could have made that got you lucky, as opposed to just limiting yourself to 1 or 2 rolls that would get you a lucky outcome. That's the whole way you play backgammon. So it's a very fascinating game that is, to me, the perfect analogy for business and life, where you're positioning yourself to be lucky in as many ways as possible. And I think that's exactly what happened with me and Josh, where we had the conversations that needed to be had and we wanted to have. We didn't keep it to ourselves. That would be one way to not position ourselves for luck. I'm feeling a particular way about what I want to be doing with my career, and so is he. We keep that to ourselves, and then luck doesn't happen because you didn't have the conversation. And so having the conversation, engaging with the right people, exposing yourself to get lucky is in my. I strongly believe that's the whole game. And that's really what's happened with me and Josh. So call it luck, call it strategy, call it whatever you want. It's a mix, exactly.
Have you intentionally gone out of your way to set up some fundamentals between your relationship with Josh early days to make sure that you guys didn't lose your friendship, destroy your friendship?
Yes. Straight out the gate.
Yeah,
when we decided, right, I'm leaving my job, we're going to share a salary, but we're like, okay, let's just acknowledge that this could go horribly wrong. And how are we going to manage this? And we came up with 2 ideas. The one, which is the most important, is you must raise things early and raise things directly to the other person if something is upsetting you or something is not right. If you sit on what's upsetting you for months and months, and then 4 months down the track say, I'm really upset at you because you did this 4 months ago, and it hasn't sat right with me. That's on me. I needed to have raised that immediately, and that's very difficult to do. And it often can be the hardest for small, petty things. Things that are just like, you know what, it's not the best, but I can live with that. It's like, raise it. Raise it in a nice way, raise it in a loving, caring way, but raise it. And then most importantly, raise it directly, so that if I am upset with you about something, no matter how small it is, I raise it with you. I don't raise it with somebody else about you, because that is just gossip.
Laterally. Yeah.
And particularly with me and Josh, where we had common friends. So we share the same friendship group, because it's not just the 2 of us that are friends. We've also got common friends. That is a huge danger, where I don't have the courage to raise something directly with Josh. So instead, I go laterally and raise it with one of our common friends about what Josh does that, is a bit irritating, or is actually a big deal or a small deal. And that once that happens, trust is eroded, everything falls apart, and we could not let that happen. So we acknowledged and addressed that right from the beginning, that we cannot talk sideways. We need to talk directly, and we need to talk immediately to each other, no matter how small the issue is. The second thing that we put in place was, throughout the journey of Humanitx, between myself and Josh, there will be ebbs and flows of who is contributing more. And it's unfair and stupid to just take a snapshot at any one moment to say, you know what? I'm doing 75% of the lifting here and you're only doing 25%. Like, what the hell's going on? You have to acknowledge that, assuming there's good faith and we're all trying our best and we're pushing as hard as we can, and we've got this, similar work ethic, and we're doing the thing. But, there isn't a right work ethic and there isn't a right amount of pushing. You just have to be on a similar, understandable wavelength. That over time, it will just even out. And even if it doesn't even out, even if it comes out at a 55-45 or a 60-40 split of like who's done more, who cares? Like, we did the thing and it worked. Why nitpick over feeling like you've lifted slightly more or whatever? Like, it's all good. We're all trying our best. We're all trying to do the thing, and just acknowledge that it's going to come in waves. contribution to the project.
Wow, I love that. One of the other questions that I've got left hanging in the back of my head is you've got a ticketing business. You set it up in 2016. Events, COVID. How did you weather the COVID storm? Like, what did you do during that period?
Wow, it was wild. It was crazy. I was in America with Josh in March of 2020, planning our US expansion, working out which city we'd be in.
Stop talking. No, sorry, please continue.
And at the time, Humanitx Australia is booming. Every month is a new record month. Our platform is phenomenal and improving every week. Event organizers are so enthusiastic about every bit of service they're getting from us. Our social impact is growing because our profits are growing. Wow. And whilst we're there, over the space of 3 days, our ticket sales went from record ticket sales to 0 and then negative, because we were handing out more refunds and refunding our booking fees to patrons compared to the amount of ticket sales that we were making. So over the space of 3 days, the business just completely flatlined. And we ran back to Sydney. Thankfully, Qantas just was cool and put us on a direct flight home from Dallas. We happened to be in Dallas at the time. And then it became a matter of a lot of soul searching, working with the team to provide a lot of comfort and security that we're all going to get through this. Our whole sales team, obviously there's no one to sell to, so everyone was kind of redirected into working one-on-one, hand-in-hand with our clients, our event organizers, to help them with strategies of postponing your event, which there were lots of, using gift cards to say to customers, hey, like allow the event to keep the money so that they can stay afloat, and you'll receive a gift card for a future credit for future events once events open up again after COVID, and communication strategies, all this kind of stuff, just to help as best we could event organizers watching their livelihoods go up in smoke. Because it wasn't just us, it was like all of our event organizers.
The entire industry around you. Yeah.
Whole industry, exactly. It's crazy. Just watching livelihoods go up in smoke was horrendous. And doing our best to help. And thankfully, we managed to keep the entire team together throughout the whole terrible experience of COVID, and came out of that stronger than we were before, because the team we built scar tissue, we kept everyone together. The Humanitix, we just continued to eat into our balance sheet and our savings just to keep the whole thing together, which was a crazy move. A lot of companies would have just said, you know what, like which a lot of our competitors did. We're firing half of our staff and we're skinnying down to a skeleton team and everyone's losing their jobs, and sorry. We just could not do that, and so we didn't do that. Not with a single person. And then we were better for that. And then what was really interesting is, as things started to open up again, word spread about how Humanitix worked with event organizers to just do our best to navigate a shit situation. And as it turned out, a lot of the other ticketing platforms, they had their legal teams coming in to protect the shareholders, to say, all right, we're going to claw back pre-release of funds that we promised. We're going to claw back booking fees. We're not going to do what we said we're going to do. We're going to, oh, you want to do that? No. Like, so just a lot of 101 bullying, bad business. And it turned out a lot of the other ticketing providers did that, reneging on terms that they'd contractually agreed on, just to say sorry, like, tough luck. And then word spread that Humanitix was the opposite experience. And then so as things started to open up again, our business just boomed and flourished even more, which was amazing to experience. But wow, it was a harrowing few months whilst we're sitting in lockdown. There's no clear sight on when we're getting out of lockdown and when events are going to be able to start up again. And it's terrifying. We've built this beautiful team, a beautiful company, all this kind of stuff. And to to lose in that way, I was staying up late at night saying, there's so many ways to lose in business and in whatever you're doing, but not like this. I can't even leave my little apartment, like in Sydney. Like I'm literally tied to my apartment. I can't leave. The industry is totally squashed. And it's because, this once in 100-year pandemic's happened and everyone's in lockdown. It's like, what? Not like this. Just anything, but not this. This is just so suffocating. And it was a sensation of feeling suffocated by the situation. The scenario was crazy. But again, that's where having someone like Josh and having somebody else to navigate that with, as opposed to it all being in my own head, I'm immensely grateful for.
You touch on an interesting point there, because as leaders, you're often in this space where you're on the cold face of the storm, if you will, market forces, business forces, etc., and your team doesn't necessarily get to feel the brunt of all of that, and that's probably what I mean by cold face. Mental health on that front can be quite challenging. I know, even just as an online content creator / business owner myself, like market forces are just like, whoa, whoa, okay, and sometimes it's great, and then sometimes it's like, what? And it's just, even just that up and down can take quite a toll. How would you say it's been super helpful for your mental health to have a partner in crime? I mean, partner in charity.
Transformative.
Yeah.
Night and day. I mean, it's worked out very well. Sometimes it can create a problem because the co-founder relationship doesn't work out, so it's a negative thing. But in my case, I'm immensely grateful that it's been a huge benefit, both for the Humanitx, but also personally for mental health. It's been such a huge asset.
And that's you. And then, so during COVID, it seems like through that period, because I was going to ask if there was any innovations that came through specifically through that time, but at the very least, what I heard was your relationships, in some grace, thanks to your business model, actually, and probably largely also because of who you guys are, because of the way you set up the business. So I don't want to just put all the accolades on the business model, but you guys as well, rolling up your sleeves to support, the event holders. You came out somewhat stronger from COVID on the other side, but also thanks to the fact that you didn't have shareholders that you had to increase the bottom line of and try and claw some funds back from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like most companies watching that scenario unfold, you would have been pressured to fire at least half your staff. And that's just the truth of it. And that alone is just mind-blowing. Horrifying, mind-blowing, and it's just another kind of interesting insight that we've now gained in this journey of what it's like to run a company, particularly a software company, at scale without shareholders. And so, yeah, that was really interesting. I think, the team coming together and building out. We were working on our processes and our scale. It was kind of, in some ways, a healthy kind of taking stock and finding ways in which we run our operations. And obviously the engineering team and product team continue to build on the platform, all this kind of stuff to make updates and additions and new features, etc. So that as things opened up, we'd be in a stronger spot. Like that all happened. And I think as well, we were able to invest in the infrastructure of the platform much more heavily to build for scale, knowing that the ambition is that we're, in multiple countries all around the planet, selling hundreds of thousands, millions of tickets, every whatever day, week. And, are we built for that? And so there was a lot of that work that then got done, which you could argue was very healthy. But geez, I mean, you're trying to find the
trial by fire,
the silver lining in a horrendous scenario.
Yeah.
Which maybe there was some, but wow,
yeah.
crazy situation.
Adam, do you think there's do you think it is like financially, fiscally possible for every business to be set up this way in the world and for capitalism to still run? Because don't we require investors investing into the stock market their money to keep these businesses innovating, providing them funds to keep. Have you thought about this? What if every single business in the world operated the way you guys did? Have you given a moment to pause and reflect on that, and any thoughts on that?
To cycle capital, yeah, you're right. Like it's quite complicated in that. To answer that question succinctly and confidently with a yes or no, I don't think there is a clear yes or no in my mind for that question, because businesses having access to capital by way of selling shares and raising equity funding is a huge source of capital, and how capital cycles through the system that then creates more money that then can then be invested in more businesses, etc., etc. So other than the logistical complexities of every business switching to Humanitix's model because of how it's not in shareholders' interests, which I think your question is more around how the system holds together. I've thought about it a lot, and it's tough because obviously you would have to take equity fundraising off the table, which leaves you with debt, or companies like Humanitix then donating profits to charities that then do work that then you're creating more economic activity through the well-being of everyone. So then there's arguments around, well, when you have a more educated population, because in our case we're educating disadvantaged kids that then have access to higher skills, affording themselves a lifestyle that is a healthier, access to better foods, housing, etc., that then comes at the stimulus of the economy because people are spending more on things like housing and good food, and which helps all those industries, whether it be farming and building and you name it. So there's a bunch of layers there as to how this whole thing can work together. But that's why ultimately at the core of this, it's asking, just is there a more equitable and wholesome structure to the capitalist model where you can cycle capital through the system? Like in our case, we're cycling capital via charities and via charitable outcomes for the most disadvantaged people. Are there ways that the cycling of capital can happen in a much more equitable manner, such that the floor through which no one can fall through is heightened as companies achieve these higher and higher successes, as opposed to the floor staying where it is as companies achieve these greater and greater heights of success. So there's a few things there that I think are really fascinating to consider, and I don't think it's a matter of, I think it's way too early to call it that, yes, every company should become like Humanitix, but it's fascinating stuff. And what's exciting even more so is the more successful we become, the more interesting of a case study it is. So much of what event organizers are on board for is not just, the donation of our profits to the immediate impact that we're making. It's what if Humanitix and other companies like Humanitix are used so much that they become the norm, that they become these huge, exactly, rivaling some of the biggest companies in the world, but they're structured totally differently. That creates a conversation that is really worth having, because it's not just these niche, smaller examples of success. It's these huge examples of success, and that really changes the conversation more than any keynote presentation, more than any idea of what capitalism can be. It's create some really epic success stories that are proof in the pudding that there it is. Like, there's an alternative. Let's have a discussion about that, because it's not a hypothetical what if the world could look like this from a capitalist perspective.
Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to inspire our evolution today. I absolutely love what you're doing in the world, as you already know. And I'm so inspired for what it means, not just on a personal level. Yes, I think you and Josh, I love what you guys have done together, and just how dear your friendship is, and just, you two as co-founders, touchwood, there's something really special there, and I think you know that wholeheartedly through and through, even more than I do. but yeah, also just, to harbor such a beautiful vision for what's possible, and to buck the norm, and kick it right in its face, I think is really awesome what you guys have done. And I think it's really, like you said, inspiring just to sort of feel into what's possible. And I love the curiosity, the play, just the whole vibe that you guys have brought together through the journey that you guys have brought to your social enterprise. It's absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I think it just is so synonymous to what, just the name of the podcast is Inspired Evolution. There's total inspiration for what's possible next for us as a collective model for how we do absolutely everything, because capitalism is baked into the fabric of how we conduct ourselves as a society. Brother, I could just thank you for sharing so much and so insightfully here today. But, there's been the late nights, the ups and downs, and are we going to weather this storm and that storm? And I'm sure you've given us the highlights, but there's probably been parts where you've just looked at Josh and gone, man, what the fuck? So having weathered through all of that, and, all of that, we get to stand on the shoulders of your entire experience through this life, to have this informed conversation. So just really acknowledging you, bro, for who you are and the way you've chosen to show up in the world, and also for showing up here today to share this conversation with us. Thank you so much.
Wow, such kind words. Appreciate it so much. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to its end. Obviously, you absolutely love this podcast, and I want to thank you so much for watching this all the way through. Here is another video that's perfectly curated just for you to watch as the next best video to keep your inspiration flowing, to keep you evolving, to keep you yowing. Check it out now.